Hello and welcome everyone to a new episode of PostPhD Directions, where we explore exciting career paths for PhDs beyond academia. Today we're diving into the transition from academia to pharma, a path that many PhDs consider but often find challenging. Our guest, Claudia Belliveau, recently completed her PhD in neuroscience at McGill and is currently navigating her own transition into medical affairs in the pharmaceutical industry. And Claudia isn't just making this shift for herself, she's been openly sharing her experience and insights with a wider PhD community on Instagram, where she has over 80K followers. Pretty impressive.
Thank you.
And in this episode, Claudia will share what she's learned from dozens of informational interviews. And I think in this case, I can really say dozens. How she's prepared for her move into pharma and what advice she has for others who are considering the same path. If you're thinking about leaving academia and wondering what it is really like to be in the transition phase, this episode is for you. And with this, welcome, Claudia.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I've personally followed you, I think, for almost a year on Instagram, found it very inspiring what you did. And one day I saw the post about the struggles of your own transition, and I read the comments and I saw lots of people already were afraid of the transition that they are going to go through soon in the future. And it seems like it's just something that is a struggle faced by many PhDs. And today, instead of only focusing on guests that have already made the transition, I really wanted to highlight someone who's in the middle of this transition right now. And this is when I came across your profile, because you're doing amazing work on Instagram, just to give a really honest and real-time look at what it really takes to make that transition. Because often it looks like, when I talk about it, sometimes it seems like it's so easy, but the reality is, even with the right preparation, it's not easy. It is a hard transition to make. And you decided to move into medical affairs. Why did you decide to move into medical affairs in pharma after your PhD? What motivated you to go in that direction?
For sure. So I think I'll also just say, like, what I found from posting about my journey is that it's almost universal. I have people from every corner of the world saying, like, hey, I'm in the exact same position as you. Either they put in more work than me, they put in less work than me, or the same amount of work as me, but they're just in the same position. They feel the same feelings. It's a worldwide struggle, it seems. So first of all, thank you for your podcast. I'm sure it's very, very helpful for PhD students and postdocs alike. So why medical affairs? So first, I'll just say I didn't start out my job hunt like knowing exactly what job and what position I wanted. I thought I knew. And then going through interview process with different jobs, I noticed, okay, I'm maybe not actually interested in that job, and really this is the job that I want. So I'll maybe take a step back. I started my master's knowing that I didn't want to do a PhD. So it's kind of funny. So I did not want to do my PhD. I wanted to just have my master's, 2 years of research, and then into industry and find some kind of job. And then during my master's, I actually loved my project. I loved my topic. I wanted to answer all the questions that I set out to answer, and the master's wasn't long enough. I loved my research group. And so I decided to do a PhD. Then I would say a year and a half or 2 years into my PhD, I realized, okay, academia is not really for me. I love research, don't like academia, don't like the way it's set up, and I don't see myself as a prof. So then I was like, okay, I know now I need to prepare to leave PhD, to leave academia and get into industry. And of course, I heard all the scaremongering online, which is scaremongering, but also kind of true. It's like we're both overqualified and underqualified. Depends what kind of position you're going for, depends what industry you're trying to get into. It is something that I have faced. So I was like, what do I do to leave academia and get into industry? So I just started using my McGill resources, honestly, my university resources. I started going to career seminars at lunch, for example. Sometimes, once a month, they would have like a 12-to-1 where they have 4 different professionals sitting and talking about their career, how they got to their career, what they do in their daily life, what their salary is like, things like this. And I just went to a bunch of those and always targeted at biotech pharma because I knew I didn't want to go into mining or something. I kind of knew the general area I wanted to go into. And and that's kind of how I narrowed down at least what kind of roles I would like. And then I learned, okay, those roles are always in this part of industry, because I didn't know also how industry was set up. I didn't know there was like a commercial team, and then there's a medical team, and that, and then there's an access team. Like I didn't know how industry was set up. So I just did a lot of research as a researcher. And I think just my skill set, my passions, my interest in what people were saying about their career all kind of landed me in medical affairs. But I didn't start only applying to medical affairs because it is a really difficult branch of the pharma industry to get into. It's quite competitive. So I started, applying to almost anything in pharma. But then through the interview processes, like once I got, to the second or third interview, I was like, am I really interested in this job? Like, do I really want to do it? And most of the time I was like, I could do it for like a year, but like ultimately I want to be in medical affairs. And so now, because I've been searching for a job for, I would say like for a year, but like hardcore for like 8 months, I would say. I right now am really only applying to medical affairs unless something like falls kind of into my lap, like, internal referrals, things like that.
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that you went to all these sessions at McGill, like different career panels, and you literally learn through these sessions, what do I like, what do I not like, is very similar to what I did myself. I organized sessions at Karolinska Institute here locally, and it was really the same process that I went through. It was like, oh, I like this part of the job, but I don't like this part of the job. And I think the more you expose yourself to these different tasks, the more you kind of get to a list of what you like and what you don't like and where you could see yourself. And then it's all about aligning these, what you want in your life with what career paths are out there.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
would you because you started relatively early on during your PhD, thinking about your next career step, can you take us a little bit back to the time when you started preparing? What was your approach? I know we talked earlier and you told me you did a lot of informational interviews, and I know you did a lot of them, and I always encourage, and I love, is for me the best free tool out there. So I really always encourage PhDs to use it. And it seems like you're the expert on informational interviews. So could you tell us a little bit on where did you find people to interview? How did you approach them? So because I really feel like sometimes when I talk to academics, they really need a practical guide. So if you had to tell us how you approached it so they maybe can replicate it.
So I'll just say maybe I'm not the expert on informational interviews, but thank you. Yeah, but I have done a lot, so I can definitely speak from my experience, but I'm sure there's other ways to go about it as well. So yeah, I started honestly from these career seminars. The people who came and sat on the panel were always like, oh, reach out to me and we can chat, and I'm sure that almost every student in the career seminar attending took it on and messaged these individuals. So first of all, thank you to all of them, because that's a lot of time to speak to like 20 students, even if it's like 15 minutes per student, like that's a lot of time. So yeah, I just honestly started reaching out to people who offered help. That's how I got into it. And then, so I would attend a career seminar. I would make sure to ask a question during the career seminar. So I can say, hi, I'm Claudia. I'm doing my PhD in neuroscience and I'm looking to transfer to pharma. Here's my question, and then they remember me more than somebody who was just in the audience on Zoom. So I think that's like the first thing that kind of I noticed was helpful. So yeah, I go to the career seminar, ask a question, message the person on whatever contact info they gave, usually LinkedIn, and say, hi, I'm Claudia. Thanks so much for your time. You always want to be like gracious to the person if you've already kind of heard from them. This point of what you said shows that you're listening, was really, really interesting. It mimics this thing in my life that I'm interested in. Try to build like a relationship between you and the individual before you actually speak with them, if this is somebody you've already heard from. And yeah, so just shoot a little message, say, I would love to chat. People call them either coffee chats or informational interviews. I think informational interviews is nice when you're trying to talk to, a wide audience, saying this is what an informational interview is. But I've never asked someone, hey, can I have an informational interview? Like, hey, can we have a chat? Can we chat over coffee? Can we go for lunch? Whatever, things like that, to make it less formal, because nobody wants to be like, I would not want to be approached and be like, hey, can I interview you about your job? Like it's a bit like, it's a lot, I think. So that's how I started. And then from those informational interviews, I got tips on how to reach out to other people. So they were like, I didn't ask at the beginning, but kind of through the informational interviews, I realized that I could ask, who should I talk to next? I think I saw some post on LinkedIn or Instagram or something where somebody said, ask who you're talking to. Who can I talk to next? And that kind of just helps you branch out and get more names, because you're right. Where would you find names otherwise? So that's one way. Second kind of practical guide is cold LinkedIn emailing, I would say, or DMing. So for that, I would look for jobs first. Find like, okay, MSL at this company is open. Perfect. Go to that company's page, go to the people section, go in the people section, see if anybody, like LinkedIn usually recommends you people that you might know, second or third connections. I would check those people and say, okay, who looks active on LinkedIn? Who looks like they comment on people's stuff? Like you could see their activity on their profile. Who looks like they would be interested in chatting? And then again, just message them. Don't ever mention that you're looking for the job that's open at their company. You know, you don't want to be like a piranha. You just want to say, hi, I'm Claudia. I have a PhD. You know, this a message that's well constructed, not too formal. It's not an email. It's a LinkedIn message. I'm super interested in your career path, X, Y, and Z that I see on your LinkedIn. I would love to chat about how you left academia and moved to pharma. And then on most of the time, I get a yes. Sometimes I get ghosted, but really, I think because I look on who's active and things like this, I have a pretty good success rate. And then you have the little informational interview. And I rarely have to ask for a referral. Usually at the end, they're like, if there's anything I can do to help you, like, let me know. And sometimes they know about the position that's open and they're like, send me your CV and I'll send it to the right person. And while I was in my PhD, that was not helpful. I never got a job. Meeting the people though is what's helpful. So like now, a year later, I'm still in contact with not every single person, but a lot of the people. And they're actually reaching out to me saying, hey, a job just opened. Are you still looking? So I think it's like you have to leave breadcrumbs and then eventually it's hopefully going to pay off. I'm still looking for a job, so it hasn't yet, but it's getting closer. And I really feel like people are trying to help me find a job at this point, which is like all I could ask for, honestly.
So many valuable insights. And I want to comment on so many things because Claudia, really, I think you just demonstrated a really important point working. Put yourself out there, be proactive. No one is
Yeah.
going to come and knock on your door.
Yeah.
Go to sessions, follow up. It's so easy to follow up after a session, compliment people. Perfect. And just say, hey, would you be open for a coffee chat? I would like to learn more. And just come across as a human being.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because what you said is you reached out to people a year ago and now they're starting to come back. And this is really the long-term game. Networking is a long-term game. And it's amazing to see how it can actually play out, how you can reach out to people on LinkedIn. Because, I preach it all the time. I'm not sure people actually believe me that it can work. And I think you have actually a really good strategy. I never thought about really looking for active people. I usually tell people just look for people that work in a certain role. And of course, you can filter by company or location. But looking if they're active actually is a good way of increasing the chances of getting a response.
Yeah, because if they're active, they're maybe willing to help more or they're more pro-social, so. Yeah.
Absolutely. But so now you said you're still unemployed. So what do you think has really been the biggest, despite the fact that you're so active, so proactive, I think it just illustrates that the transition is not easy. And this is what I always keep saying to people. And once you're in industry, this is the interesting thing. You will see so many opportunities, other opportunities might open up, but you need to get the first foot in. So what do you think has been the most or the biggest challenge so far in your career transition?
Yeah. So maybe I'll give a little disclaimer here. So first is I'm trying to stay in Montreal. So I'm not looking, well, Quebec, but I'm trying to stay within my home province. So I have looked at a few opportunities in like a neighboring province, but I'm just like, I'm not really willing to move to another country or continent. So I know that that's limiting my job search for sure, because there are hundreds of thousands of jobs available. If you're ready to pick up and go, I think it's a lot easier to find a position. So that's just one little disclaimer that I think is very important. Like, I know that's one of the reasons that I'm not getting a job. Second is that I'm being very picky. I'm very gracious and lucky and grateful to have this Instagram account that I do monetize, as well as I have my own freelance scientific consulting company where I have contracts with clients where I also get paid. So I am able to be picky and wait for the perfect job. So again, that is one reason I don't have a job yet. I think if you're willing to take any job, it is a little bit easier to get in. And most people say that. Take any job, get your foot in the door, and then you're good to go. Like your next opportunity will come to you. And really, that's what I've heard from all my information interviews. That's what I've heard. But I'm not like at the stage yet where I want to do that. So I think the hardest part for me is definitely, I think the hardest part is really just finding somebody who's willing to hire somebody who doesn't have industry experience. So I've been lucky with a few roles where the hiring manager was very open to having a new PhD grad. So I've made it to the end of the interview process multiple times with multiple companies, but then they take somebody who's already been in the therapeutic area, for example, or somebody who has connections in the territory of interest already. So there's always like a reason I'm not chosen, which is fine, but I do get to end of interview processes. So I know it's coming. I think the hardest part is getting that first interview. Like before I had my first interview, I was just rejected from 47 companies. Then I went through a coaching program, which was actually very helpful. So I know you also offer a coaching program. So I think like if students are listening to this, like it's definitely something to consider. I started landing almost every position I applied to, I at least get an HR call back now. Most of the time they say, you have no experience, like we're not interested. But I get HR calls now, which is before I was not. So I think it's just trying to find a way to get those HR calls. And then you just have to then find somebody who's willing to take a new PhD grad and then be the perfect candidate. So it's a lot.
Okay, so now I would like to dive into one thing that you said, because you
Mhm,
said you applied for 74 positions.
mhm.
You didn't get a
Yeah, 47.
single,
Yeah.
47,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
47, and you didn't get a single
yeah.
like callback. What happened between not getting any callbacks and all of a sudden getting callbacks from HR?
Yeah.
What did you do?
So two things. One, I graduated.
Hmm.
So instead of being PhD candidate, I was PhD. That was one thing. And second thing is I went through this coaching program where we went over my CV, we went over just my HR call, like it's a mock HR call. And honestly, just changing my CV, I'll caveat in all these informational interviews, I've shown my CV to industry professionals and they're like, yeah, beautiful. It's great. It's not an academic CV. It looks great. But still, I wasn't landing any HR call, nothing, no feedback. But then I did this coaching program where you go over your CV and also it was like a specific coaching program for medical affairs. So it was just the keywords changed, like it was language that I had never heard. We don't use it in academia at all. Like never have I heard leading without authority. Although that's what I've done my entire PhD. Nobody has ever coined that term. So just changing key terms in my little summary at the top of my CV and then bullet points, showing value, which I was doing, but not in the same way after this coaching program. And that's really what changed. It's the CV that gets you the HR calls. Unfortunately, it's not it's your CV or your resume. So those are definitely the two changes.
Thanks for sharing. I think is really, I think a lot of, when Claudia, when a lot of PhDs come to us, they come and say, I have applied for half a year, I don't get a single interview. And it's really at this, it's
Sorry.
hello, no, it's so cute. And it's really at this point when you then ask, okay, may I see your CV? And you can immediately tell why they don't get any call back, because so many things change and do you call it resume actually in the, in
I don't know. I literally label it CV/resume because
yeah,
I don't know. I don't want them to think I'm sending them something different than what they want. So I literally label it both. So
yeah.
I think resume is the appropriate term, but I don't know. Maybe somebody else could actually let us know.
And we do call it here non-academic CV. So
Okay.
people are not familiar, but it is a big struggle that I have with my work, because
Hmm.
since we're globally, is sometimes some people think, what is she talking about, a CV? Some people think, what is a resume?
Hmm.
So okay, I just wanted to ask because you also refer to
Yeah,
the CV. So I
both is
was
the same.
so,
Yeah, in my head.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, it's pretty amazing to see what can happen when you tweak and when you
Hmm.
make small adjustments, because at the end of the day, you're evaluated based on your CV/resume, because it's the only thing they know, unless you get a
Yeah.
referral. And then of course you can jump over, which is always a big plus. So Claudia, up to date, would you mind sharing? I know you keep track of your applications.
Hmm.
Would you mind sharing how you keep track of all these applications, how you structure that application process? Because I know you're very organized around this
Hmm.
entire process, and I think it could be really helpful for others to hear how you approached it. And I also know that you have built this Notion dashboard to help
Hmm.
others structure their job search. Yeah, would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
For sure. So when I started applying to jobs, I kind of knew it'd be something I would get unmotivated or demotivated doing because it's hard. So I originally just started keeping track on an Excel sheet. Or Google Sheets, or, I use Excel, but there's Google Sheets for free. So originally that's what I did. I just put like job title, company, date I applied, did I hear back? That was it. And then through the process, I'm up to I'm over 70 jobs now that I've applied to. And it's just like I was getting lost in the sauce. This is the word I like to say. I just didn't know like what's what, which CV was for which job, because I tailor each one for each job. And so I started creating this Notion dashboard. I switched over to Notion because it's more functional than Excel. Also, it's free, and I'm not a student anymore. So I don't have Excel. So yeah, I switched to Notion, and I created like a multi-page system now. So I have my application tracker, which now has expanded. I can actually upload my CV to the database. So to this Excel looking sheet, I can upload the CV that I applied to that job, the cover letter that I applied to that job, the job posting, because I got kind of burnt a few times where I showed up to an interview and I didn't have the job posting because they took it down. And then, they referenced something in the job posting and I read it 5 months ago when I applied, not the night before the interview. So I started saving job postings, which I think is like pretty critical, and I can have it all linked in a nice sheet. I also use the same database to prepare for my interviews. So before I go to the interview, I answer questions like, why this company, why this role? Because it's always a question that I get. And why is company, why this role? And like a third question that I can't remember right now, but it's there. And then I have a space also where I can write what went well in the interview, what questions I got, what went not so well, and how to prepare for next time. So yeah, that's one page of my Notion dashboard. Then I have another page where I actually track my network. So I've also been in a position where I'm like, oh, Merck is hiring. Wait a second, who do I know who works at Merck? Who said they would give me a referral, and I was, again, lost in the sauce. So now I can track after my informational interviews. What did they say? What did we talk about? So next time I meet them, what can I talk about? So that's in there. I have a page where I kind of just go back to reset my values. So like, what's a non-negotiable? Is high salary non-negotiable? Is it nice to have? Or is it like whatever at this point? I just need a job, like what are all the values that I want in this company, in the role? I have a planner on there. So like I forgot to email HR after an interview. I emailed 72 hours later and I was like, oh, I really should have like been on the ball 24 hours max, And so now I have like a little schedule where I can put in and set myself reminders on a calendar. So really just like it's a dashboard to make sure I'm organized. It helps me stay motivated because it's cute and pretty, and yeah, that's kind of it. And it is available. If people are interested, I could send you a link. And yeah, if not, it's available on my Instagram if you come find me.
Yes, please send us or send me a link. I can put it in the show notes. And also, of course, I will link your Instagram. So, Claudia, I found you on Instagram like a little over a year ago. You must have been at the end of your PhD back then. So you talked a lot about your PhD back in the days. So what motivated you to start posting about the career search and like what's the response that you actually get from your followers who are mostly, I would assume, probably PhD students or postdocs, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a big following of, well, I have a big following of, one second. Okay. Yeah, so I have a big following of PhD students, even undergrad university students who are not sure if they want to do grad school. It's a big, a lot of questions I get are about, should I do grad school? And then early career professionals also, because, it's PhD students who have already transitioned to either being a PI or being in industry. And so what motivated me to start posting about my job search is that it's my life. It's literally what my life is right now. It's my full-time job. What I was posting during my PhD is, again, my life. It was what I do on a daily basis, how I do it on a daily basis, how you can do it too on a daily basis, like how to write a paper, how to write a literature review, things like that. So I was really sharing in a niche of my own kind of experience. And so I just brought that forward, and I feel weird now talking about like how to do this in the lab. Like I'm not even in the lab. What if it changed? So I just kind of transitioned it with my own life, and it really resonates with people. Like I remember following a lot of PhD influencers in this space, like before I started an account, and it's like they finish their degree and they have a job. They finish their degree, they get engaged, they get pregnant, they get married, and it's just like their life is like right after their PhD, their life is ready, ready to go. And I don't feel that way. Like I am really like, I'm just like, what's happening here? Like, I don't have a job. How do I get this job? So I just thought that it was nice to share. And I do see a few more influencers in this space sharing this like difficult parcours, because like nobody was really talking about it before. It just seemed like you're done and you get the job. But it's not like that for, I think, most students was what I'm seeing is what the feedback is.
Most certainly not like this for most students. You're just
Mm-hmm.
done and you got a job. I can tell from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so what do you think? I think, it's so nice when you have built this PhD community. And I think one of the things that is always so nice about these communities is to know that you're not alone. And, we're in this together and you have all these PhD students or early career researchers following you. What are their feelings about the transition? What do they share with you? I think it's always nice to hear that we all feel the same
Yeah.
about these things and no one is alone. So would you like to share a little bit with us? What is the feedback that you actually hear?
Yeah, so it's exactly like what you said. We're not alone. Like when I post, honestly, my best reels for the past like 2 months have always been about saying like, wow, how did I go through all of this schooling, all of this training, like literally the highest degree you can get and still be like not valued in industry, you know? And I think it's different if you're going into academia. That has its own problems, like so and I'm not an expert there. I'm not trying to get prof position. But really that's the main thing is like we feel undervalued. It's like nobody takes us seriously. But we spent years trying to become this serious professional, which I think people are not valuing. And when I talk about that, the response is always, oh my God, yes, thank you for talking about this. Like no one else is talking about this. Thank you so much. Like it's always like that. It's like I feel the same. I feel depressed. I feel sad. Like, why can't I move forward? Why am I not given this opportunity? And yes, like I also get this other corner of the internet where they're like, what, you think your degree makes you deserve a job? Yes. Like, I'll be very honest. Yes. We put in 6 extra years, 7 extra years, depends what country you're at, sometimes 3, 4. Like we did the training. We have the skills. It's just you have to let us show you we have the skills, which I don't know. I don't know why they think PhD students are not capable. I really don't know. And maybe it's because we are not explicitly trained in how to be in industry. So yeah, it's just really what resonates with people is that they feel the same. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, that PhDs feel like the PhD is not really valued because, of course, we put so much work into getting this degree, and then you go out into industry and you realize it's not what we thought it would be. And I think it's often a bit hard for us because it always depends who are you competing with, right? So who is in the same pool? And if there is someone who maybe has more experience, you might not actually make it, depending on what's the urgency of the company to hire. But I do think because I also hear a lot of PhDs saying, why don't they see my value? And then I say, often it's you need to tell them about your value.
Yeah.
Because what I do see a lot of PhDs doing, maybe not necessarily correct, is they just go out and, they have this descriptive CV where it's completely unclear for me to understand how can you actually do the job. And then the way we're looked at is, as an academic, because people think of us often as students.
Yeah.
And then, I come in and I think, I had this big pie chart on LinkedIn, which was my ever best pie chart ever, because it really says what the world thinks we are, and it's student, and then what we actually are. And it shows we're like, graphic designers, we're statisticians, we're a little bit of everything. We wear so many different hats. It doesn't mean that we're experts in all of these, but I think what it really shows, we have all these skills. We have worked in so many different, not domains, but you know how to do a graphic, you know how to deal with data, you know how to read data, you know how to present, you know how to communicate. But often is not to go out and tell, but show in your CV how you applied these skills. And I think this is where a lot of PhDs struggle, and often they come to the conclusion, my skills are not wanted. And I often believe if you tweak it and if you position it, I mean, you saw it yourself, Claudia.
Yeah.
When you change the language, everything changed for you. Of course, you also had the PhD degree, but at the end of the day, you used a language that resonated with HR.
For sure.
So they had a reasonable belief that Claudia understands what she's talking about and how she can bring value to the company. So it's very interesting because I think we all, and many of us, feel this way. But I also want to say there might be a solution out there for everyone by it sounds simple, it's not, but adjusting the language towards the industry relevant terminology can actually help a lot.
Yeah. And I think a good example is like if you have, let's say you're a PhD candidate and you have an undergrad trying to join the lab. If they're sending you an email that says, hey, I love science, I want to work with you. you're going to be like, okay, but like you're not showing me that like you're going to be a good person in the lab, you know? Whereas if you have someone messaging you, I read your research on XYZ topic. I was really interested in this. I would love to gain expertise in this domain and learn the skills necessary in the lab to do flow cytometry, you know? And then you're like, whoa, they know what the word flow cytometry is. They showed that they're going to be capable. So I think it's the same thing. Like we're leaving academia, so we have to stop being like, hey, can I have a job? We have to say, hi, look what I learned, XYZ. And I think what you said is exactly right. We need to tailor our profile, what we're showing to the companies.
I think also, what you just said with the student, I think it's also because when you go in, a company doesn't just want to feel you want to work for any company. I'm here because I believe in your mission. I believe in your values and I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about working in medical affairs. And why is this so important? Just like when you work in a lab, is because when you think someone comes in with passion and you don't have to motivate them to get stuff done because they are intrinsically motivated to deliver. They're intrinsically motivated to make a difference. And I think that's the same whether you go into industry, just as you said, or if you come and you want to join a research lab. Everyone wants to see, hey, you're actually passionate about the methodology or the science or something. You're not just reaching out because you just didn't know what else to do. And I think it's a little bit the same in industry. You need to demonstrate that this is really something you want to do. And this requires, of course, and I think you did, when I look at your journey, I think it's pretty impressive because you're basically like a poster child for how to make a transition in a sense of what we're teaching a lot. And it's really about do the work, sit down, reflect, go out, listen to seminars, see what's out there, do informational interviews to understand more, and then target a few paths, maybe 2 or 3 max, and then just go out and apply. Because you will have a higher, I don't believe in the shotgun approach where you just apply for everything. A lot of PhDs do it, from sales to medical science liaison to maybe a research scientist. And I think what comes across is that you will have a very generic CV. And you cannot really tell this coherent story of why you want to work in this role. Because I'm sure, Claudia, you have thought through why you want to be a medical, why you want to work in medical affairs. And probably if I ask you questions, you will have no problem whatsoever to answer a lot of questions related around why would you like to do that? Why does this align with who you are? And I think this is something that shows, know why you want to do it. And you thought
It's
it
because I
through.
researched. It's also like I wasn't
Exactly.
inherent. I had no clue
No.
what medical affairs was 2 years ago, you know? So I think that's a good point that you bring up is like the shotgun approach, which I was doing at the beginning. I was like, hey, I just need a job in industry. That's what everyone says. I was applying to everything and their mother, you know, like literally every single job. And yes, you can still, even if you tailor your CV, it's not a coherent story. Like now, when I look through all my bullet points on my CV, I'm like, wow, this bullet point is tailored to medical affairs. I would not use this bullet point in a CV for commercial, you know, for sales. I would not. So, yeah, I think that's a really great point that you brought up.
So I think what you said is really, really important because when someone puts so much work into doing research in one field, it shows you're passionate. You really are dedicated to work in this field. And when you think about hiring is a very, very expensive process. No one really likes it when you talk to hiring teams. And reducing the risk in hiring that you will be gone in 2 years' time, or that you're just here because you didn't know what else to do, is super important. A Claudia walks in and is super passionate, and that's why we teach PhDs to be human. Show your human side when you go into the interview. They want to see you're passionate. It's not only about technical skills. It's so much more about who are you as a human. You will work in a team. They want to get to know you. So show your passion and show why you want to do that job. So I think very, very good point that really illustrates why research is important. And, I always think we are all researchers. And just as we research for our own thesis, we should research for our next career step too, and really be proactive because no one is going to do it for us. And I just love so much about the way you approached it. And I hope it's going to inspire a lot of other PhD students out there to take charge of their career and start early on and not wait until their last year
Yeah, for
and
sure.
think then, oh, what's next,
I think also so something I would change if I could, if I can go back in the past, is I would look into industry internships. So this is something I don't know how throughout all of my informational interviews, I did not learn that there were internships. I don't know how, honestly. It's just like there was like a blank space in my brain about this, but I did not know that you can get industry internships during your PhD. I didn't know until a week before my defense. And guess what? You need to be a student to do these industry internships. So it was honestly too late for me when I learned about it. I considered pushing my defense to get an industry internship. I didn't because I was like, I'm just going to get any job. That was my mentality back then. But yeah, I really think they are game changer, and more companies are offering them. And it's a straight line into a job from what I've seen. So like the pipeline that I've kind of seen people use is hand in your thesis, have a 3-month internship, and do your defense. So it obviously won't work for all students, but if I could somehow magically go back in time and like make my future easier, I would do an internship. I would try to find an internship. I don't know if I would get one, but yeah, that's definitely something that I would consider.
Thank you for sharing, Claudia. I think that's hugely valuable. At Karolinska, we also run actually an internship program from the university. So your salary is paid by KI, and a company just has to take you in for a month, and they don't pay anything.
Wow.
But actually, it has resulted in really good results because, you go in, they take a shot because they don't pay anything. So it's a no risk kind of deal. And it often has resulted, or often, I don't know, I don't have the statistics, but it has resulted in employment after. And if it did not result in employment, I think what actually helped was this 1 month of being in industry and having seen how things are done differently. And just having a little bit of a feeling, and maybe also coming across as less academic, because sometimes they think of us, oh, they're academics, they're students. The other day I talked to someone, Claudia, sometimes they really think we just sit and read.
Yeah.
Which is really not what we do. It's really practical, hands-on experience. And if you can actually show them through an internship, look, this is what I'm capable of. Actually, I think a lot of them get convinced, because the thing is, I talk about it a lot, how hugely valuable PhDs can be in industry. Like from thinking, well, we might not know everything right now, but we're actually really good at learning and acquiring new knowledge.
Exactly.
And you can throw us in and we just go and we deliver. Is really, I think this is something we're really good at.
Yeah.
You only have half the information, you figure the rest out, and we're hugely independent. And I think that's such a great asset to every company. But obviously I'm biased. But no, I really do believe so. And I think I wished more universities would offer these internships, actually.
For sure.
To give that.
Yeah. And I think they're super valuable, like you said, to see what industry is like, because also maybe you won't like it. And maybe you'll decide, actually, I don't want that. So it's not only a one-way street of you getting in. It's also, do you want this? Which like I'll only find out once I get the job after a year, of being out of science, out of research. And then it's going to be harder if I want to go back, which I don't foresee being the case. But, for some people, industry is not the end all be all, and they don't like it once they're there.
Absolutely. And I mean, we could talk about this probably for the next half an hour, because it's so true. At the end of the day, it's a very low risk testing out something, because I think a lot of scientists or like PhDs, they're afraid once, if they move out of academia, that they basically cut their ties. So this is a really nice way of testing, because as you said, it's not for everyone. And this would be a really hugely valuable thing to do, to give both industry to show what we can deliver, but also give the individual, the PhD, a chance to see what is it like to work in industry. So one last question for you, Claudia. Obviously, I could always talk forever, but if you could give one piece of advice for, I don't know, first year, second, third year, wherever they are, what would that piece of advice or reassurance of what would that be?
It sounds like maybe cliche, but I live by this rule. Follow your passions. Seriously, like you mentioned it before, if you can show you're passionate about something, people are more enticed to talk to you, right? If I look back in my PhD and even my undergrad, like anything I chose to do, it was because I would like it, or I thought I would like it. If I didn't like it, I'm done with it. Like I really believe that following your passions allows you to create a future that you'll like. Like I decided during my PhD to follow my passion of communicating science. I did so many different things. I was like trained in SciComm. I did a public seminar where I spoke to like in front of 300 people, like a TED Talk style, of my project. I love communicating science. I realized that that's what I liked from my PhD. Yeah, research was fun, but the story that you get from the research and from the data is what's interesting. This allowed me to publish like 12 papers during my PhD because I did different projects that I was interested in, and then when you're interested, you want to finish them. If you're not interested in it, it can go on for years, one paper, like I really think if you follow your interests, you're creating a future for yourself that you will enjoy. And now I'm getting to do what I like to do. Yes, I don't have like a stable income. I'm stressed most of the time of whether I'm going to get another contract or be poor, but still I like day to day, I'm doing what I like. I communicate with people. I'm trying to roll with the punches and just follow my passions, that's my advice.
Yeah, I want to comment on this. I'm 200% with you. And I think when you follow your passion, when you find something that aligns with your natural strength and you're working out of your strength, like in your case, maybe communication. And to be honest, Claudia, like when you do something that you really love and that you're passionate about, I think you will naturally succeed.
Yeah.
And I think you have shown this with your Instagram account because you actually, I mean, yeah, you can say it's not work, but I mean, honestly,
work.
like, yeah, I mean, it's not like work. I mean, you should definitely, if you moved into a communication role, this would definitely be relevant experience, not only paid work. And I mean, maybe you're even paid, but it's like you see how you can be successful because I think the way you approach things, you always have, I mean, I see it with myself. Sometimes people go like, how can you be on LinkedIn and create content all the time? You know why? Because I love it. I mean, for me, I have days where I'm like, I'm not so much into it. I also don't post every day, to be honest, but I do love to be on there. I do love to engage with the community. I do love to create posts and I love to help others. And I think this is something that comes through when you really are aligned with what you want to do in life. So yeah, I think you can only succeed. And I think it's also, sometimes I think just like in the situation where you are right now, but also me, myself, and when I started this business, it was the beginning of 23. I wasn't financially stable at all, but I jumped right in because I knew this is what I want to do and it's worth following this passion and it's worth overcoming the challenges that I know I will meet. And I think it's just when you hit a wall, it's just like to show how much you really want something. You can stop or you can go around, above, or wherever. And I think it's a good way to prove how much do you really want something. So anyhow, I don't know if I'm even making sense, Claudia, but it's really so, it really resonates with me when you say I'm going for something that I really love and I'm happy to make some sacrifices along the way. I'm also very happy that you actually just mentioned that you do have a different stream of income, which I think is important just to be, so people don't get the wrong idea of, okay, this is something I could do. So be aware that you can pay your rent, be aware that or make sure that you can do all of these things.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, it was a pleasure, Claudia. I could talk forever. And last week I had the longest episode. And this week I will have to say it again, is the longest episode in the history of my short podcast, actually. Yeah, maybe I will have you back again in some
I would love to.
months with a job, actually, so we can kind of like do a follow-up on this podcast. It would be my pleasure. But with this, we're coming to an end of this episode. And I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Claudia, for sharing your expertise, giving us an insider look at the reality of transitioning from academia into pharma, specifically a very, I would say, competitive role, medical affairs. And if you want to follow Claudia's journey and learn from her insights, be sure to follow her on Instagram. She creates amazing content there, and check out her posts. She also created this dashboard, which I will put the link in the show notes. And if you found this episode valuable, please leave us a review. It helps other PhDs find the podcast and get the guidance they need for their own career transition. And with this, thank you all for listening and hope to see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Thanks so much for having me.